Secretary John Delano at KDK TV Pittsburgh. It's good to be with you. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I know that you're no stranger to Pittsburgh. I think I may have interviewed you before you hold the office that you hold now. You have come to Pittsburgh a number of times over the years. Before I ask you about the foster youth program, tell us about your special connections to Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh is one of our biggest hubs for the Carson Scholars Fund. Carson Scholars Fund honors young children from grade 5 all the way through grade 12 for superior academic performance and demonstration of humanitarian qualities. And Pittsburgh has the highest number of 9-time winners in the United States. People who won every year from the 4th grade all the way through high school, being incredibly smart and incredibly caring individuals.
Well, that I think used to bring you to Pittsburgh almost every year. Is that right?
I still come every year. We still honor the students. In the beginning, the Pittsburgh Steelers were a big part of helping us get started there. So even though I spent a lot of time in Baltimore, I like the Steelers.
That's exactly the right thing to say, you know, when you're talking to Pittsburgh. Well, let me ask you about your visit. It's part of a Foster Youth to Independence initiative. I don't think most people have an idea what that's all about. Can you explain it to us?
Well, a little over a year ago, a group of young people came to us who were aging out of foster care. About 20,000 young people age out of foster care every year. And, you know, they're put out, they're on their own. And, you know, unlike most young people, they don't have a family or a support system, and about a quarter of them end up homeless within the next 4 years, and an even larger percentage than that end up inadequately housed. So it's a very difficult time during their lives. And they came and presented to us what their plight was and some thoughts and suggestions. And our incredible HUD staff put together the program in 4 months. Within 4 months, we were giving out grants, vouchers, which allow these young people to actually have a place to live, a place that they can call their own. And it also includes wraparound services to help them. So in many cases, for instance, they may not be in possession of a high school diploma. They'll be able to get their GED, certain types of job training, medical care, whatever it is that they need to put them on the path to success, because we want that to be a temporary situation and a trajectory towards self-sufficiency.
Do you have any idea, Mr. Secretary, how many young people this affects in Pittsburgh?
In Pittsburgh, I think there are about 48 so far in the Pittsburgh and the surrounding, immediate surrounding counties in Pittsburgh. And, you know, nationwide, we're up to about 665 individuals, and it just is continually expanding.
Well, I realize it's a brand new program, and just to be clear, what we're saying is that when a foster child turns 18, is that it? They're essentially out on the street without any kind of support at all?
That's correct. Now, you know, there are some who, you know, have done well in the foster setting, maybe have won a scholarship, go off to college, or maybe have developed some relationships that, you know, allow them to flourish, but unfortunately a large number do not.
Well, we actually recently had a candidate for Congress who came out of the foster home situation, but fortunately for him, his foster parents, I think, ultimately adopted him, and he went on to success, great success. But I can't imagine what it must be like to be just sort of let go and out on the street like that.
Well, particularly at the very time in your life when you really need support and you really need guidance. And when it's not given, studies have shown us that a large number of these young people end up, you know, in the sex trade and things that completely ruin the rest of their lives.
Let me ask you, since I have you, about your department and work in the COVID area. You're a physician, so I know this is close to you. What do you think are some of the best programs that housing and urban development offer to people in your particular jurisdiction to deal with this horrible pandemic?
Well, of course, we immediately invoked the forbearance, which led to a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, and have extended that till the end of next month. And have, for people who are renting, provided a mechanism so they can be recertified in terms of their income, so that people who've lost their jobs or had a significant decrement in their income can be recertified because their rent is based on their income, so it can be adjusted accordingly. Those kinds of things obviously make a big difference, and we have a toolkit now that we've made available to all the PHAs and the various people who provide for renters, and mechanisms whereby they can engage in repayment schedules and other types of forbearance that would prevent anybody from even mentioning the word eviction.
Do those federal rules supersede any state rules?
No, they do not. Some states are very responsive and very responsible and are working right hand in hand with the servicers, with the landlords, and with the renters. And that's a very responsible way for a state to act.
Mr. Secretary, are you satisfied with how local housing authorities, are they doing enough to protect their residents with respect to this pandemic?
I think in general, we've been quite pleased. We've had things in place from the very beginning, mechanisms whereby, for instance, people who contracted the virus could be isolated and still taken care of. And that extends even to the homeless. We've contacted all the continuum of care organizations that take care of the thousands of people who are involved. And I think that's one of the reasons that you haven't seen, the predicted disaster amongst the homeless. But we're not obviously going to rest on our laurels. We're going to continue to be very vigilant, watching this very carefully, and making adjustments as necessary. Because, what's going on is temporary. This too will pass. We have to bridge the gap without allowing the financial infrastructure of the country to be destroyed, and in which case everybody suffers.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Do you feel as if, as a physician, what's your advice to all of us? Are you one of those who say wear the mask and wear it lots?
Yeah, well, what I would say is we've learned a tremendous amount about this virus, and let's take advantage of that. We've learned the importance of personal hygiene, hand washing, social distancing, mask wearing, and we ought to use that knowledge accordingly, but particularly the young people, the vigorous, healthy people who are extremely unlikely to be impacted in any serious way by the virus. They should be taught to assume that they are asymptomatic carriers. And that's the way they should act whenever they're around an elderly individual or a vulnerable individual. And if we would do that, we would be able to depress this thing almost immediately.
And then finally, Mr. Secretary, you are a highly successful African American. Do you have any particular message to those who are out on the streets here in Pittsburgh and elsewhere in these Black Lives Matter protests?
Yes. I would say please don't allow yourself to be manipulated to believe that you're a victim and that somebody else is causing all of your problems. I remember I used to hear that all the time as a youngster until my mother made us start reading books. And I started reading about entrepreneurs and scientists and surgeons and explorers. I began to realize that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. Doesn't mean there aren't any problems in life, but your success or failure depends on how you react to those problems. And, destroying someone else's life is never going to do much to improve your own.
So are you suggesting that some of these protesters are too caught up in the protests and not in their own personal future?
I think a lot of people are being manipulated. And, both black and white, white guilt is responsible for a lot of the activity that we see as well. And we all need to just sort of take a step back and realize that we're not each other's enemies. And, we have a country that is imperfect, because nobody has a perfect country, because they're all inhabited by human beings. But it is a place that has allowed a lot of people to accomplish their dreams. It's the destination place for a lot of people from around the world. It's the only country that people form caravans trying to get into, not trying to get out of. And let's not destroy it. Let's remember those who are coming after us. Let's learn from the mistakes of the past and utilize those to make even more progress.
Twice you've said some of these protesters have been manipulated. Who's doing the manipulating?
I think those who wish to fundamentally change our nation, this is not something new. This goes back even before the Fabians. People who want to have a utopian, they call it, society, where the government takes care of you from cradle to grave, but you give the government full power. And that really is antithetical to the principles of the founding principles of this country. And, in order for them to fundamentally change our country, one of the things you need to do is change the belief systems in that country. And how are you going to do that? Well, first of all, you destroy the history, because if you can destroy the history, then you can destroy the identity. And if you can destroy the identity, then you can destroy the structure on which the beliefs are based. And if you don't believe in anything, it's very easy to be deceived into thinking something else. And we see that going on all around us. We, the American people, have to be smarter than that. It's happened many times around the world. All you have to do is be a student of history to realize how easily things can turn around. You look at a place like Venezuela, which I visited on multiple occasions when it was doing very well, before they took the hard socialist turn, and it was very prosperous, beautiful museums and gardens and resorts, and the biggest controversy was whether they were the most beautiful people in the world. And now look what's happened. It completely destroyed in a very short period of time. And if people think that can't happen here, believe me, it can. And we must be smart enough to realize what we have and to preserve it.
Thank you, sir.
We've been watching this little bit of rain south of Pittsburgh, actually south of the PA border, so Maryland